Fantastic. That was excellent. Thank you to Folian President Diomaye Faye for that great conversation and his leadership in Senegal and how he sees us, the place in the world. We want to switch gears a little bit now and turn to technology, how Africa's innovators and entrepreneurs are connecting with Silicon Valley and beyond to attract investors and cultivate sustainable partnerships that can propel Africa's tech landscape toward greater global influence and lasting impact. So please help me welcome our panelists. First on stage, Ms. Ahuna Eziakonwa, the UN Assistant Secretary General and Regional Director for Africa at UNDP. Mr. Kojo Boache, Vice President, Public Policy for Africa, Middle East and Turkey at Meta. Mr. Daniel Marlowe, Managing Director at 4DX Ventures. And to moderate this discussion, please welcome Mr. Inolua Aboyeji, Founding Partner at Future Africa.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to be part of this panel. We're going to be discussing very briefly over the next 25 minutes, Silicon Valley meets Africa. And as the guests have already been introduced, I'm just looking for this to be a very warm, engaging conversation where, we have a conversation about what exactly will it take, or what exactly do we need to do for us to imagine a future where Silicon Valley values, traditions, results, outcomes, culture, and Africa with its ingenuity, its youth, its its prosperity, its governance, meet and deliver the kind of outcomes that we've all been looking for. And so without further ado, I'm going to launch right into the conversation. Please, everybody, assume that as you answer the questions, you will introduce yourself and whatever it is you want to say about what you do, even though I figure your titles are enough. But if they're not, feel free to add more color. My name is Inolua Aboyeji, and I am the founding partner of Future Africa, which is a seed stage fund, and super excited to be part of this conversation. So my first question will go to Mr. Kojo from Facebook. Over the years, Silicon Valley companies have been investing in Africa, and I presume many more, like your company and many others, are interested in investing in Africa. Based on what you've seen, what do you think that Silicon Valley investors should be looking out for as they think about investing in Africa?
Thanks a lot. I'll take your invitation. So good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Kojo Boache. I'm the Vice President of Public Policy for Africa, Middle East, and Turkey with Meta, formerly Facebook. Our companies include Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, as many of you know. Our investments are deep. I think the first thing I'll speak to on the question is I think that it boils down to motivations. I don't think we should see every company as the same. But I think as Meta, when we think about our future and our mission is to build the tech that drives and is and enables the future of human connection. And I think when we think about the continent in that way, many of the things that drive us will drive companies with other motivations. We've heard Strive was on here earlier talking about GDP growth. We know that AI, for example, is set to increase global GDP by 15.7 million or whatever it is, based on what you read. It's only in Africa where that increase in GDP by 2030 is set to double. Africa's current GDP is said to be 2.83 million. It's said to double by 2030 if we get things right in respect of AI to 2.9 trillion. I apologize, trillions and billions. To 2.9 trillion. It's only in Africa where it doubles. We all know and have heard over the last day and a half about the youth population of this continent as well. 70% of people are under the age of 25. By 2050, 25% of the working population will be African. If you're thinking a bit of it as an investor, just about the economics, the ROI, the addressable market, then these things are an amazing opportunity for you. We've heard again over the last day and a half about the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Those sorts of things have in part driven what Meta's investments, including things like To Africa, the world's longest submarine cable, offices in places like Nigeria, South Africa, staff across the continent, have in part driven it. But I think more than anything else, and Daniel and I were speaking earlier on, it's about the talent on the continent and the ability for that talent already to solve issues and build companies based on local context that we honestly and firmly believe can become international if given the opportunity. And amongst the many opportunities we've provided, and I could speak to impact grants that we've provided to various small companies who we hope will become medium and large-sized companies. And if you are here, just before lunch, we'll be making an announcement where we have 5 Llama Impact Grant winners. So please do stay to applaud those young African entrepreneurs and developers who are creating companies and solving local issues. So I think there's that talent that's already creating opportunities and already creating solutions and businesses in Africa that I think Silicon Valley companies like ours are compelled to invest in. I'm not going to use the expletive that Daniel used before we spoke with regard to the talent he sees on the continent. Yesterday I was here and I heard somebody, an African, say that they don't invest, or at least their company, I'll forgive him, that his company doesn't invest in the continent anymore. Too many problems. So I asked Daniel, who is of a slightly different hue to me, what attracted you to it? And I'm going to let Daniel speak about what he saw, but that talent, amazing intellect, the ability to grasp and seize opportunities, I think is what attracts Silicon Valley companies the most, who have our mission and our stated intention for the continent.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mr. Kojo. You can clap if you want. Speaking of talent, one of the most revolutionary, I would say, shifts I've seen over the last decade of working on the continent has been to see the development community engage in the innovation economy. When I was getting started in the space, it was normal to see, Facebook come and sponsor hackathons and see Google come and sponsor hackathons. But it wasn't normal to see UNDP. It's like back then it was just, refugees and war zones. It wasn't young, innovative talent that could actually solve problems. So I was wondering, Ms. Hahuna, if you can walk us through the thinking behind this big shift that UNDP has undergone from investing in development as a broad theme to really focusing on innovation and creativity as a big boost for investing in African youth.
Thank you, Uni. UNDP turned 60 this year. And so it's been, thank you. It's been quite a journey. By the way, I have to say, if you've not yet been up on this stage, it's absolutely impossible to see. We can't see you. You can see us. I've been on the other side, and I didn't realize that it's, you can't see anybody's face from here. But anyway, we'll try to imagine the faces in front of us. But I was saying UNDP just turned 60 this year, which means we have a bucket full of lessons of data about how you do development and what works, what doesn't work. 60 years is a long time to write a script about what makes progress happen. And of course, we've benefited from that hindsight and from that experience in understanding what we've been doing right and what we haven't been doing so right. I think one of them is the fact that, we're a $5 billion a year organization. We are present in 170 countries and territories. I cover Africa, where we cover 46 countries. Africa absorbs the most of UNDP's resources. We are present in these 46 countries, which is a huge asset. So there, you are starting to see the convening power of this organization. But for us to have meaningful convening of multi-stakeholders that would bring their assets together to create impact, we need to have skin in the game. So we can't talk about, innovation being a great thing when we're not investing in innovation ourselves with development financing, or when we're not understanding the private sector players who are in the space. The second thing is we have been doing development practice traditionally from a very piloting project lens. And what we've observed as development money dries up and private sector and technology come on stream is the power of platforms over pilots. Because platforms gives you the space to co-create with unlikely partners, but those who bring value asset so we can deliver on scale. That's the other thing, fragmentation of development programming, where everybody is doing a little bit of something somewhere, and all we're generating is mice economies, livelihood enterprises, which do not add up to deepening capital markets. So another big lesson is we need to bring assets together to create scale and speed at the same time. And why is it important for an organization like UNDP to get involved? Some of the things we're talking about there are hard to do. If you think about where innovation succeeded in Africa so far, fintech. It's because fintech is fairly easy. And we came and asked the question, you may not agree with me, but regulation-wise, I know you're struggling, but overall, investors want something that's, understandable, predictable, and fintech was. But what about agri-tech? What about green tech? What about all the other sectors that transform life on the continent that we know? What about smart cities, creatives? What about health tech? So we've created this initiative, which in our knowledge is the largest initiative to support the innovation ecosystem in Africa. We've talked about it on this GABI platform, but the news I'm about to give you now is in 18 months of going to execute, we have created 170 startups, speed. We have spent over $50 million nurturing this ecosystem. We have created a policy lab that is not only creating a new culture for governments to invest in policy and the right regulations that can help these startups go to speed and scale and create great companies, but also working at the level of the African Union to say you need to adopt harmonized policy systems that enable borderless Africa ventures, where if you're in Namibia and you've just come up with a solution that can also serve the Nigerian market, you can do that without too much pain. And we're saying also that we need the universities involved. And in here, I have to say, you have something to do with this, because when we came to you a couple of years ago, you said, UNDP, you don't know what you're doing, because at the universities, you have an army of idea-rich young people. All they need is for you to create spaces for them to experiment, to play, to incubate, and then connect them to industry players. So we today, thanks to you, have invested in 14 university innovation pods, and it's incredible what's coming out of this in 14 countries, and 26 by the end of the year. The vision is 54, one in every African country, and the vision is raise $1 billion to support this ecosystem.
Super excited about how you're tapping into the raw potential of our youth in the universities, and UNDP is redefining development by helping scale that talent to their true potential. Well, Dan, you're still going to answer Kojo's question, because it wasn't my question, but I'll add mine on top of it. I've known you for too long. And you're the operator's operator. You've operated in Silicon Valley, you've operated in Latin America, and then somehow we suckered you into coming into Africa. You got to tell us why. Which one of the pitches worked for you? Or was it the Banku that did it? You got to tell us. So tell us, given what you've seen about these different ecosystems you've been a part of, what makes Africa so special?
Yeah, so that's, I have known you for way too long, my friend. So 2 minutes on myself. Daniel Marlowe, managing partner of 40X Ventures. We're an early stage venture fund investing in Africa. We're on our third fund, 200 million under management. We've invested over 50 companies on the continent, providing great technological solutions to build the future of Africa. And so, to answer your question, you asked me backstage, why did I pick to become a venture capital investor in Africa as the next stage in my career? I had been an operator before, and as you mentioned, had operated in all different emerging markets, including Africa. But when I started to spend more time here as an investor in 2013, investing my own money into people like yourself, and spent time with Walter and Peter, the two co-founders of the firm, I just became enchanted by the talent that I came across. Every time I came to the continent, I met more people, more young people, who were just at a level that was really remarkable, from skill set, energy, the understanding of business models, and most importantly, the hustle needed to actually build great companies in emerging markets. It's really easy to build something on a whiteboard, but it's really hard to build in practice, especially in emerging markets. And so finding people who have that moxie to want to build in emerging markets is really hard to find. And so for me, it was the first step of why I wanted to do that was I spent more and more time on the continent and spent more and more entrepreneurs. The second one, which is a little counterintuitive, is I think you can actually build more interesting business models in Africa. If you're building a fintech in the US, for example, to keep the fintech theme going, there's only a relatively few areas that are not massive ecosystem players, massive embedded incumbents that you're dealing with. Whereas there's a lot more blue ocean opportunities on the continent to build really interesting business models that take local context. We have 3 local offices in Accra, our largest one, to our Ghanaian friends, Nairobi and Cairo, and the vast majority of our team is there, and that local context really matters. So taking best practices from Silicon Valley, from my own operating skills and just from investing in Silicon Valley, and taking the local context that you need to have in that. And so this is kind of, Africa has what I would call a last mover advantage, because you can see what works and hasn't worked in other emerging markets. Take those things, apply the local context that you have, and if you do that, then the third reason why I'm excited about investing in Africa is because I think the returns are going to be phenomenal. We're targeting top quartile, top decile returns. Our first fund is that way. Our LPs invest in us because they're going to provide those returns, and we're going to build the next generation of companies in Africa, which is going to give a lot back to local communities and a lot back to the local markets and economies, building that up. You talked about the demographics is destiny, and it's true. We heard a lot about that the last 2 days on the GDP growth, the demographic growth. But if you're not investing that returns back into the continent, that's a missed opportunity for us. And so when I looked at where I could spend the next decade of my life, it was really clear that it was not just the most rewarding from a personal perspective, but it also was the best from a economic perspective to spend time building things where you can have the biggest impact, and impact with not just personal impact, but financial impact and building out economies. It's really exciting to me.
Amazing, amazing. You can clap, please. Thank you very much, Daniel. Now, our time is, we're getting short on time, but I'm gonna ask one question across board. The way we think about the world at Future Africa is Africa's biggest challenges are also Africa's biggest opportunities. And from each of you's vantage point, whether it's Madam Ahuna from a policy and development perspective, or Daniel from a operating and investing perspective, or Meta with Mr. Kojo from a investing perspective as well. There are unique challenges that you've faced. But I don't want you to dwell too much on the challenges, although you can briefly describe them. I want you to tell me one thing and one stakeholder who I'm sure is in this room that can help you turn that challenge to an opportunity. So we go away from here with some solid takeaways. So I want to start with you, Mr. Kojo.
First of all, I'm not sure that challenges on the continent are that unique. I think it's, as Daniel, and I'm glad to see Daniel shaking his head as well. I think there's this idea, as I asked Daniel a quite blunt question, of this being a dark continent, it having particular challenges to this continent. They're the same challenges that we find all over the world. It just looks and feels a little bit different, and that's manageable. I think if I have one shot at asking for support, greater dialogue, greater trust, greater collaboration, all of those things that I think is what's required, at least one of the ingredients required to move us forward, or some of them, it would be for policy and regulatory predictability. And harmonization first and then predictability. I think the one thing that we've found that makes it challenging, and I got into policy and regulation because it's dynamic and it's exciting, but is an unpredictability to it. So when you invest, as we did, you invest in 700 meters of fiber in a particular country that will remain nameless and connect 3 million people at the time to internet for the first time, and then your biggest app at the time, Facebook, is blocked. That's the kind of unpredictability that investors don't like. And Facebook in this particular country remains blocked, despite the fact that millions of this people's country citizens can still connect. So I think in as much as this is a dynamic sector, what we're seeing is, as many people have described, is probably the fastest and arguably the most fundamental change we've seen in human history, and certainly with AI. I think an ability to be able to predict, harmonize policy frameworks, and we're seeing lots of efforts on the continent to do that, and then to make the operation in those frameworks, within those environments, predictable, that's number one for me. So if there are people out there, and I assume there are, not only policymakers who I would like to call friends and colleagues, but also companies working in public policy who can also advocate for this, that would be the key thing for me. Thanks, Ian.
Absolutely. No, that's a fantastic one. I mean, one thing I would say, though, is the age and the level of sophistication and expertise of Africa's digital economy ministers is actually increasing, like in Nigeria and in Zimbabwe and in, so that's a plus. So I think we're headed in your direction. Maybe you get us there faster by becoming the Minister of Digital Economy.
I don't think I'm astute, clever, or sharp enough to be the minister yet. So to all the ministers, I hail you.
Trust me, greater men have said less. So don't worry. So Daniel, what about you?
I would just add on to that and say I have seen a tremendous difference since we started investing in 2013. I think we have a long way to go still to get there, to the level we want to get to, but getting engagement with the regulators, getting engagement with the government, and having clarity. The most important thing an entrepreneur needs is clarity on the rules of engagement. Yeah. So if I need to get licensed, okay, great. I have to get licensed and all my competitors need to get licensed. All everybody wants is clear rules of engagement on that. And then I would extend it. So I think we're making progress there. You've seen some interesting stuff recently in different markets with respect to stablecoins and things going on in South Africa with SARB and things like that are more interesting developments and trying to look into the future and saying, where is this continent going in the next decade? Instead of looking backwards and saying, where has it come? Where is it going the next decade? And saying, how can I build regulations that are flexible with respect to that? I think that's really important. And then I would add on to that another layer, and this has been a common theme this week as well, is just trade within Africa. Oftentimes it is more difficult to get things within intra-Africa than abroad into Africa. And so I think utilizing those advantages and building actually a trade union and things like that will actually spur economy within the continent, that is where the combination of 54 countries will actually move into a much greater economic health, and they'll be able to negotiate better deals and things going forward. So those are two big ones, and then governance is one I think is important to have, and having governance is something that I give advice to any entrepreneur out there. Take that off the table. Just get the right governance structure set up early stages of your company, because it's going to be something that does come up, and the more you just make that a non-issue, the better. And so I think that's another one I'd say.
Amazing. Thank you very much. So governance, trade within Africa, and like Mr. Kojo said, the regulatory. One thing I want to say about trade within Africa is, I don't know whether you've heard of the AFCFTA, but I've never heard a more beautiful pitch for the AFCFTA than the one you just gave. But then over to you, Madam Ahuna. What would you say the biggest challenge that we must translate to an opportunity is for what Timbuktu is doing and for what UNDP is doing to succeed?
Yeah, first of all, I have to say one of the things that excites me about this space, about GABI, is the fact that for once we have a space where we don't dwell on Africa's problems and challenges on the fact that Africa is shaped like a question mark, but on the fact that Africa has the answers, and that this is a moment of opportunity for the continent. So my starting point is to look at the opportunity. If we don't have 70% of the population in Africa connected online, that's not a gap, it's an opportunity. And this lens is really important in order to answer your question. And the two gentlemen over here, Daniel and Kojo, have actually made the best pitch for Timbuktu. Because within the Timbuktu ecosystem, we are exactly building that culture with governments of having the right regulatory environment that does not strangle businesses but helps stimulate them. And one of the ways we're doing that, we have 10, now 11 verticals, because Timbuktu is not sector agnostic. We very deliberately chose to have sectors that also contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. And so we're forcing a little bit you investors to look beyond fintech and look at all the other opportunities out there from a tech perspective. And to do this, we're building these hubs, Pan-African scale hubs, hosted by each country in these 11 countries. We've done 6 of them so far. In each of these countries, we're requiring the governments to adopt certain policies and regulations that are friendly towards startups as a condition for becoming a host. And I've just come from Ethiopia, where we have the manufacturing tech hub. Right now, we have the first cohort in residence. Ethiopia has just adopted its Startup Act. And within that Startup Act, it has checked off all the things that we said to them will be necessary for them to become a Pan-African host for this manufacturing and to have a market that is opened up to the rest of Africa. All the other hubs, the other host countries, Ghana with agri-tech will have to do the same. Kigali with health tech has done the same. Zambia with mining tech is doing the same. So the whole regulatory aspect of this is a core part of Timbuktu, and I hope that those in the industry can see there an opportunity to invest in. But lastly, I would say, Ini, perhaps what we're looking for here is not one issue or the other. We're looking for the whole ecosystem support. If you're a founder, you need, or an investor, you need the regulatory environment to be favorable. You need capital, and in particular, early stage risk capital. By the time they get to your doorstep, somebody should have held their hands to incubate, to test in the market, to support, to mentor, so that they are those great businesses that you want to put money in. That's what Timbuktu is trying to do. So we need that early stage risk capital. And I say to all the angel investors, institutional investors who, but also DFIs, to put money, catalytic money, in nurturing the talent that is out there, because we need to nurture the talent. We need the capital for that early stage, and we need the regulatory environment. But above all, we need lawyers who can be friends to these founders. We need accountants who can hold them by the hand and show them the way. We need businesses who have made it, business tycoons like Strive and others, to be the mentors for these young ones. And we need everyone in the room, private, public sector, academia, working together to make it happen. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you very, very much. I can't think of better final words, and I just want to say a big thank you to the panel for this exposition. Unfortunately, I don't have any more questions or time for any more questions, but I think just to summarize and leave a thought for the crowd, that here we are with Meta, which has consistently invested in Africa, with Daniel from 40X, who has been investing in Africa since 2013, with UNDP, a development organization, which has made this big turnaround to start investing in Africa's talent and is basically leveraging its convening power to bring the innovation ecosystem together. I think with this group that's right here on this stage, I can't see why we would be, I can see why we would be unstoppable. So thank you very much for listening to us, and have a wonderful rest of the afternoon.